Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump, and with me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan. We're back with some OTAs. Organized team activities have started for the Giants this year, and just a couple of quick hitters, some quick talking points. Mike, how are you? What's going on?
I'm fantastic. I'm over my Knicks malaise, and in Vegas last week, something very rare happened. I actually came home a winner. Won like
Oh,
$500 in blackjack, so
nice.
pretty happy. Hopefully that means things are turning around for luck for all my horrible sports teams.
That'd be nice. I mean, bring us right back to the Giants here. It all starts with your OTAs. Um, we usually do not take the OTAs very seriously. I'm going to continue that tradition. I will say, though, that some things are old news and some things are new news. So I do want to talk about it a little bit. Old news first. Old news first. OTAs, every single year we have this conversation. They are not mandatory. They're voluntary. You don't have to be there. Certain players should not be there. Guys rehabbing injuries, guys who are holding out for a new contract, anything that might get you hurt. I think
And
fans take them a little too seriously.
I think we're at the point of the calendar where we're starting to starve for football. I think this past weekend is that midway point between the Super Bowl and opening weekend. So now we're on the downside, and now we're starting to get anxious. And now we've been tired of talking about players we'd never see with the draft. And now we want to think about our team. And to your point about not everybody even should be at OTAs, information about certain people you certainly shouldn't be paying attention to. You
Mm.
know, I think it's remember the whole purpose of OTAs. They're not even practices. They are getting the team ready for what practice is going to be. I mean, we've got down to this granular level now of the NFL season and this in the calendar where, preparing rookies, preparing free agents, their first time really in the building in any organized event, what we're going to be doing becomes news and becomes speculation and becomes reading the tea leaves. And let's let them just do their job this weekend and get through it before we worry about what we can read about it and take away from it.
Yeah, and a lot of the players that are here are invites that will only be here for this. I mean, there are some guys on this invite list that are strictly camp bodies. So, like, you know, I understand both sides of it, right? Like, if you're taking the season seriously, you're going to work hard from the moment there is work to do. You're going to do everything that is in place for you. Um,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, I understand the mindset of, like, okay, they're not mandatory, but, in life, the people who do the most succeed. And that, I get it, right? I
yeah. I
understand.
mean,
But
it,
it's
it
also
depends
just
on your.
like these guys are pros. Remember the '07 season, Michael Strahan didn't even show up until week 1.
Oh, I remember that the night before camp began, he said he's not showing up. I remember distinctly where I was. We were out east somewhere at a friend's house. It was the middle of the summer, and all of a sudden the news came through. He's not showing up, and I just remember looking at Cranky wife like, we're gonna go through another fall, another summer of just needless noise. And who knew 6 months later what was going to happen? But yeah, I think it's all up to the individual player. I mean, you know your body, you know where you are in your career life cycle, you know your situation on the team. And it's not uniform. This is not going to boot camp with the army where everybody shaves their heads and everybody is a nobody and a plebe and a nothing. There is a meritocracy and there is an order of things. And if you are a rookie, you better be in there and absorbing everything like a sponge. If you are, an unrestricted free agent, same thing. If you're somebody who's a 10-year vet who's been with the team for a while, I think you can probably, go on muscle memory a little bit. And if you're someone who's trying to fight to make the roster and your last shot in the league, you better dress to impress. So, and I think it's being realistic with yourself and your situation is how much you should really put into OTA. And as fans, I think you just kind of let them do their jobs and don't worry so much about what you're reading out of it and making your own interpretation, because you're probably just following a narrative you have anyway about it.
Yeah, I understand from a fan perspective. For me, if you're going to get anything out of OTAs, it should be extremely minimal, and it should only be, if you're going to get elated or any giant range of emotion there, it can be about seeing some players for the first time. Like, oh, I'm so excited about Malik Neighbors. Look at this sick catch from OTAs. You're allowed
Oh,
to get excited for
look
that.
what number
Sure.
he is.
Yeah.
That's what I get excited about.
Sure.
You know,
Be excited for
the,
all that shit, but yeah, don't
well,
read
the,
into too much.
the biggest thing I get excited about is I do not hear each day somebody tweak something, somebody got hurt,
Right, of
something like
course.
that.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing about this.
Which is,
It happens.
If people are bitching about Darius Slayton not being there on day one, then I'm, I guess, happy because that's because there's nothing to talk about, and this is the season of no news is good news.
Yeah. Why are you not happy that Darius Slayton? Again, it probably projects back on you, because you think that everybody needs to be there for every second to, this isn't Little League. This isn't a high school team. This is an NFL team. So it's just one of, it could be a hang up you have about, you all should be there. The coach is the king. The player is just a number. But no, that's not the way it works.
And Darius Slayton showed up anyway.
Yeah, so there you go.
In other news, not only was Daniel Jones present at OTAs and participating in OTAs, but he was doing so without a brace. Thoughts, Cranky fan?
Great. I mean, I think part of this, it's interesting how that news got out pretty quickly. I mean, obviously, it's a narrative that the team wants to push to let at least the perception that he is ahead of schedule and will be ready for week one. That impacts how other teams look at this team and how they prepare for this team too. So if you want to project good things, again, we're still in the off season, and winning the off season is important. But that's fantastic. That's good news, because the nightmare situation, if you want to have any hope for this season, is that Daniel Jones is not starting week one or month one as quarterback one on this team. No matter what you think of him, the alternatives are worse. So very encouraging that he is at least projecting, and they are presenting him as someone who looks like he might be ready for week one. And that's great.
Yeah, and I think he's throwing the ball with a bit of zip too. So my injury concerns are most of the way gone. It's not a surprise to me that he's participating in drills. It's not but no brace at all is interesting to me. Given that it was sort of kind of a non-contact ACL, I'm not a doctor, and I don't really remember if there was any kind of report on the severity, or if there even is a degree of scales, for severity and how easy it is to recover or whatever from one of these things. But
seems quick to me if he's playing without a
brace is a little wild to me.
Yeah.
The next hurdle really is going to be, is he, because he's not going to hit any contact at all until preseason, right?
Oh, no. And
so then the next hurdle is going to be, how much is he moving on that leg? Like running, moving the pocket first, and then active runner. Are we calling those plays still, etc.?
And that's his special sauce. I mean, to be very honest, is his ability to move around a little bit.
Yeah, I would say so. His combination of skills in that he's a good runner and a good deep ball passer really is what inflates him to be more than he might be, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm still. You made a comment that your injury fears are going away. Again, until I see him play 4 quarters in an actual game, that's when I'm going to feel a lot better. I think up until then, it's gonna be little tick marks and little checkpoints along the way. That okay, encouraging, baby steps. But I am still gonna be, sitting on one tush cheek watching preseason up until we get to the regular season, and also still up for debate how much we're actually going to see him in preseason as well.
Yeah, I meant more so my fears that he wouldn't be ready to start week one,
Oh,
due
I
to
got you.
injury. Yeah,
I got you
because
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to be wincing probably every time he takes a hit at
I think
this
I will
point.
I think for the rest of his career, I'll be
Yeah,
doing that at
I,
some point.
I
There'll be
think
some
so too.
degree of get up.
Yeah.
So
Um, This year, as we were kind of talking a little bit about training camp, it was announced that the Giants are trying to arrange something where they have some joint practices with the Detroit Lions and the New York Jets. Um, I am a big fan of this. I'm sure I'm probably like a broken record at this point, but the offseason program is garbage. The limitations that were put in place by the NFLPA, I think, ended up hurting the NFL players more than they realized. Now, of course, they're not obligated to work super hard in the summer, but I think they've actually screwed themselves into a bunch of conditioning related injuries that have affected their careers and contracts. And they kind of lost. I think what they pushed for actually hurt them. So I think the more practices you can get in there as a team and as an individual player against new and fresh environments, the better. Because practices against other teams is kind of like preseason games, and there's already not enough emphasis put on that, in my opinion. So I'm a big fan of all of this.
if I was commissioner, I would get rid of preseason games and I would schedule these joint practices throughout training camp. Because to me, you know, a preseason game, you're trying to mimic a game. That's not the goal of preseason. The preseason is to get you prepared to play games. And, scores don't really matter. You want to prepare for a season, specific scenarios, but you don't want it to be just the same drill over and over against the same people when you can expect the same expected outcome. If you're playing against, a different team, it's not going to be the same as something that's scripted and expected result being this. You want to, and also the little bit of competition, I think, also helps as well. So I think it's a fantastic idea, and also I kind of like these two teams are doing it against.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, the Lions are a team I think a lot of teams want to smack around. I think people are already sick of them already, and also Jets Giants, it's just a natural thing. So I like the fact that these are the teams that will be participating in these against. And I said I would rather have multiple ones against different teams sprinkled throughout training camp at different times. And you can script it all you want to be like the first few are more walkthrough-y, shortsy wearing, and later on is more to prep for. I think you're going to get teams more prepared for week one doing it this way.
I agree. I agree. Um,
You set boundaries and guidelines that we're not going to hit our quarterbacks. We're not going to blitz or just whatever the guy. As long as they're agreed upon, then you just open it up and you work together. I mean, these teams have staffs that are enormous. They could work together weeks and months before this to say for joint practice number one is going to be a focus on you know the Giants have the ball. I don't know, making this super simple. The second one will be when they have the ball, and different things. So it can be planned, but you don't know really what's coming from a strategic and a tactical standpoint. And I think that helps the mind for these players as much as it's the physical getting ready.
yeah, I think so too. And I think also just the idea that you're training against somebody who is not your teammate. Like
Yeah,
at a certain point, Brian Burns and Andrew Thomas are going to see enough of each other this year, right?
they're gonna taste each other's chewing gum at
Yeah.
some point. They're gonna know.
So, it's just good in my opinion to not like it's so hard to just force yourself to like woodshed out techniques correctly or whatever.
Yeah.
You're kind of in the back of your mind like knowing if you just have like a win button move against a guy. You know what I mean? It's like I know how to beat him.
Football isn't golf where it's just repetition, taking the same swing over and over again.
Oh no, it's
It,
a lot of
it
setup and yeah.
yeah, it's not practicing foul shots where all it is just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Football is every play is different, every opponent is different, every individual battle is different. And if you're just practicing to beat this one guy so you can beat him over and over, is that going to really make you better, in the long run against, facing 8 or 17 different starting, defensive ends that you're going to be facing all year? Probably
Right.
not.
Exactly. Um so I'm happy with this approach to the offseason. Here's a little change to the offseason. As noted by Dan Duggan, I don't know how much of a change this is, but they jumped into 11 on 11s in OTAs this year. He had noted that this was not something that happened last year. They only did 7 on 7s. The only thing I'm going to note about this is I'm noting a change in the approach here. I'm seeing a whole team collaborative, drill being inserted. This is probably very minor. I'm not trying to blow this up. But what I like about this is I kind of think that the Giants' offseason approach last year, when you look at the 2023 season, season and offseason leading into it, Daboll and Shane are riding pretty high off of their 2022 results. This is supposed to be their year where they get to just swing, you know what I mean, and just do things as they want to do them. And I think that it was too easy on the players. I think that they came out flat right away. They didn't push very hard. But just in general, the results were not good. And I'm seeing a change in approach already to a new season. It's just encouraging to me that I see a coach doing something different. Not just like, this is my way, things didn't work out last year. A little bit like, maybe I should do something different.
I think for the first time there might be more cohesion in the coaches' room themselves.
I
I
agree with
think,
that.
I think without Wink Martindale, and I have no idea if Wink was the reason why they did 7 and 7s. Now we're doing 11 11s, but I think you're having more collaboration and more kind of okay, you know, Brian Daboll won that battle, that pissing contest over who is in charge of this team. And I think now he has, this is to be determined if he has a coaching staff that's more united with him, or if they're just yes men doing whatever he wants, which is wrong. But I think now that, at least in the beginning, I think there's more in syncness with this coaching staff. And maybe this is something that he wanted to do all along, and maybe he had resistance from, Wink, that he doesn't want his defense playing 11-11 so early. I don't know, but I always try to look to some things deeper than others, and something as subtle as this tells me that, you know, that could be as much humble pie that last year didn't work, but maybe there's more cohesion with these coaches and more of Dable putting his stamp on how he wants to run things.
I think also I'm encouraged by the fact that it's like a full team activity here. You think about what 7 on 7s are versus 11 on 11 here. It's adding in the offensive line, really.
Let's face it, last year, you can definitely tell there's frustration on both sides, both units, offense and defense, where, an offense that, down to your third string quarterback, and in a defense that couldn't stop anybody. So I think you need to get a little unity in it and have this team playing as a team. The full offense playing together, the full defense playing together, the full offense against the full defense. I think there has to be a little bit of team building on this team as much, because last year was rough from a record standpoint. Again, whatever drama was going on,
I think from any perspective, it was pretty much a disaster.
I, I can't see how it isn't, unless you're a fan of drafting in the top 6. No.
um, yeah, so I wonder if Carmen Brasillo had any hand in this. If his philosophy coming over as the O-line coach is to, get them working together, get your starting 5 working together as soon as possible, because maybe that's the secret there. I've never been a fan of how much they've flipped around the offensive line. And I don't know if that's Brian Daboll and his approach, if it's, Bobby Johnson's approach, or maybe if it was a collaborative philosophy there, or if it was done out of necessity because of the ragtag pieces of offensive line that they sort of had to start with. But you know what? I don't care if at a certain point. I think that was done intentionally. Not even at a certain point. I'm pretty sure that was just done intentionally as a philosophy.
I think it was done initially because of the the holes and the depth issues on the offensive line, and it just kind of became the way it was.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to readjust things in midstream once you're going down a certain path. And,
I think so, but yeah, I don't know. It almost seems obvious that that's a bad idea, doesn't it?
The offensive line has to work as one unit. It's five bodies working as one, and they need to know if one person farts, the other four need to know who dealt it.
Yeah,
and they have to be they need to know every little nuance, every little thing that each does, though they know where they need to be and who they need to cover for, and what shortfalls and strengths that the guys around them have in every little step. So every drill, every snap, every OTA, every joint practice, every scrimmage, every preseason game has to lead up to week one. Everybody's ready and playing together as a unit. So the quicker that happens, I mean, it's not like we're have open competition for five openings, starting jobs and five, bench positions. We sort of know how this is going to shake out, this offensive line. They have to make their decisions sooner than later and get them playing cohesively.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that this should have been the approach from the beginning. I'm glad that it's kind of the approach this year.
Brian Daboll,
and if you notice, they went out and they grabbed offensive linemen early in the offseason process.
Mm-hmm.
So
Brian Daboll is still only starting his third year as a head coach in this league.
Right.
This is a pretty young coaching staff, and they're going to figure things out too. I mean, nobody goes into a job, besides me, and on day one is great and knows everything and does everything the right way. There's a learning curve. Some things you're going to do by trial and error. I mean, it's a big difference from watching your boss do it or doing it on a lower level than this and doing it in the big time. So it's okay. I mean, so those little things are, they're little growing pains that, when you bring in the young hotshot to be a first year coach, you should expect these things. And I think that there's patience enough for it. And we're getting into year 3. Hopefully that learning curve is smaller now, and little things that are kind of like bigger changes become tweaks as he goes along, but we'll have to see.
It appears now that Brian Daboll is calling the plays early on in the OTA practices. He was right in the quarterback's ears, orchestrating everything, and Mike Kafka was several yards away. This is all per Dan Duggan on his report on the first couple OTA practices. I'm happy about this. I think that Mike Kafka should be very much involved in Daniel Jones' development. I think he should be very much involved in the game planning and setting things up. At the end of the day, this team, before Brian Daboll can worry about... I think he's got to call the plays. I don't think he's comfortable with a tenuous roster situation and somebody else calling the plays. If you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. Right now, I think... eventually, on a roster that Brian Daboll is comfortable with a job security situation that he's comfortable with, let's just say he gets 3 playoff appearances in a row. They don't win anything. They win a wild card round, lose the divisional one year, win the divisional one year, and then lose the conference championship, and then win the division the third year, and then they lose the conference championship again. It's pretty sure that he's got a job for a while. He's got a pretty good roster. I think at that point, he's comfortable letting somebody like Mike Kafka, somebody else, call the plays and he manages the team, right? In this situation now, there should be no wavering. What happened last year with Mike Kafka's the guy calling the plays, and then when shit hits the fan, I have to take the reins. You can't change the entire mode of your operation mid-season, in my opinion. It's catastrophic.
Well,
At best, you can hope to limp across the finish line.
and you're also cutting the legs out for the guy who's supposed to be the leader of the offense.
Exactly.
I mean, it's when there's usually no coming back from I'm taking the offense away from you, or the play calling. So, I'm not exactly sure why Mike Kafka is still on. Not that I don't think he's a good coach, but the way last year went down, I'm kind of shocked he's still on this coaching staff.
In terms of the Giants retaining him or him staying here, or both?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, whether he gets a head coaching job somewhere else, whatever. My point is that, again, it's hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube once you take away a major responsibility like that. Even if it's in sporadic little things, it's kind of like death by paper cut. You do it in this game, you do it in this game. Whenever things aren't going good, I'm going to grab the headset and I'm going to grab the play sheet. I'm going to start doing things. So, but remember, this is also OTAs, and you're calling plays, quote unquote, is different than calling plays in the game. And in calling plays in the game, you're trying to win a game. This might be, I want to see specific things as I want to see development. I want to see getting into a rhythm and a routine of how we do things. So it may not be exactly, it might be just a head coach saying, this is the way I want things run, which might be a teachable moment for the players, but also for Kafka too.
Sure.
So I'm not reading too much into it, but
yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. But
I have a feeling though that if he pulls that I got the play sheet thing in week 4, if things are going bad, I don't think it's coming out of his hands the rest of the year. I think that's it.
Well, I was just kind of under the impression. No, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that kind of leads us. That leads us here. Brian Daboll was a never thought of anything else except an offensive head coach, right? Coming over from Buffalo, there were no illusions about who he was. We didn't know how he was going to manage the team, but it was pretty clear that he was going to have a strong hand in the offense. And much as early press conferences wanted to be like, well, this isn't the Buffalo Bills offense, this isn't the Kansas City Chiefs offense, this is the Giants offense, this is what we've built together. It's pretty much built by Brian Daboll. I think Mike Kafka definitely brings a lot of things to it, but the pace, the control, the overall philosophy, I think, is very much Brian Daboll's. And when you're that much of an offensive head coach and you come into a new team as a head coach, should you even have a vision for the defense? And I think it's an interesting question. Do you deserve to, or should you just be punting to an expert?
Well,
or should you just be just hiring the most senior guy or the guy who seems most responsible or motivates the best? What do you think?
a team that is completely aligned and all sailing in the right direction is a team that's usually the most efficient and usually the most successful one. So just to say I'm bringing in a defensive coordinator and you do your thing, I think that defense on some way has to fit with your overall philosophy of what kind of team you want to be and what your thumbprint on this team is going to be ultimately. I think what kind of defense you run ultimately has a say in what kind of offense you're going to run as well. I mean, if you have an offense, for example, where you want to, be a fast-paced offense, no huddle, line up as fast as you can, get as many plays as you can. Also, that's also kind of predicated on what kind of defense you're going to run as well. Are you going to run this, it's going to be the same type of defense as well, where, I think it all needs to be semi-related. So I think you do have to have your thumbprint on what the defense is going to be to some extent. Now, I don't think you should be involved with, okay, it's 3rd and 7. I want you blitzing here, or we should run this scheme, and we're up by 10 with 3 minutes left or something. But I definitely think the overall philosophy needs to come from the head coach of this is what he wants to run.
So it's interesting. So you're saying, the type of team that you are. You mean like,
Even if you're an offensive guy, like
mhm.
I think you still need to have your stamp of what you want. All the pieces have to fit. And I think a defense that kind of complements what you're trying to do on offense is very important. So I don't think you should say, oh, Wink Martindale's out there on the market. Let's get him. But if the style of what they're running on defense is not really complementary to what you're trying to do on offense, I don't think it makes any sense.
Now see, that's so very interesting to me because it seems as though the opposite is very true, isn't it? You get a defensive coordinator, a defensive uh, head coach. It always seems like they're just sort of buying the hot name offensive coordinator, either like the proven guy who's always done well and for whatever reason either can't hack it as a head coach, like just recently got fired as a head coach, goes back to being an offensive coordinator, or is the QB coach for the hot shot quarterback who does really well. Now he gets a promotion to offensive coordinator somewhere and runs whatever offense he was running. You know what I mean? Like it always does seem like a defensive head
Well,
coach just like lassos some offensive guy whoever's available.
yeah, well, I also think that, not every situation the head coach has carte blanche to bring in whoever he wants.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
If you're not like this with your general manager, he might be, okay, here's your new defense. Here's your, this guy was available. We got him. All these other things. How involved is your owner with things? Does he like shiny toys? Is there anything to do with agents? Like,
Does he like Jason Garrett?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think there's a lot of things at play where it's not as pure as the head coach, is given a budget of how much money he can spend and go out and go to the grocery store and get your groceries.
Right.
So I would think that, if the relationship between the general manager and the coach is really strong, they're on the same page of what they need to do and I think you know, the coach lays out his vision of how he wants his football team to run, and the general manager helps him acquire those assets, not general manager imposing assets on him and he has to coach around what he's dealt.
Hmm. I think that as a competitor in any capacity, you have to be both confident in yourself and realistic about where you are as opposed to everyone around you. Um, if you are an offensive coordinator that has just been given the job as a head coach, that should be the ego boost, to some point, some validation that you are very good at what you do.
Mhm.
But it's important to remain humble to the point to understand where you rank amongst your peers. I mean, you're already an NFL head coach, so you are elite. But where are you among these other elite minds, these up and comers, these old dogs, these legends? You know what I mean? So, in my mind, if you're an offensive head coach, then you think you either run the best offensive scheme in the league, or it's a damn good one, and you're very aware of which ones are better than yours and which ones are worse than yours. And another thing is, football is a game of balance. Like, if you know your scheme inside and out, then you know the frustrations you have playing a defense that knows how to play you. You know your own limitations. You know where you struggle. Then you should kind of know, if you piece all of that together, that I run a very effective offensive scheme among the best minds that do this, and I struggle with this. This
I don't
really puts my offense in a bind. It puts a lot of the league's offenses in the bind. This kind of philosophy wins more often than anything. I don't think is unreasonable. I don't think it's weird to be like, you know what? In today's NFL against these offenses, this is the most consistently hard defense to play against. This kind of scheme, because it does this X, Y, and Z, or it takes away this really important object of whatever.
I think that's true, but I don't think you have that self-awareness when you become a head coach for the first time. I think
Probably
that is.
not, but if
I
that's
think
not
that's
really
a.
necessarily the question. The question is, should an offensive head coach even have a vision for the defense, or should he just be the offensive, head coach? And,
You
and
you are
I
the.
think that you have to know at some point what things the best of the NFL struggles with most typically.
Yeah, and I think that last part I think comes with experience, and I think that comes with maturation that you don't have on day one. But
Sure.
I think when you become a head coach, and even if you've been an offensive coordinator and
Well,
you're
I mean,
going up through
forget
the
it.
ranks,
Forget it's even day one. Who says that? What if it's Norv Turner applying for a job? You know what I mean?
no,
He's
I was going to say if you're applying to be a head coach, and you become a head coach, you are the most important person in the room. The responsibility is on you. You are responsible for that. The high level, the vision, the philosophy of a team, implementing that down to the smallest detail of at 8:55 on Saturday morning we are doing this as part of our training camp. So, if you are responsible for the 100,000-foot view and the 4-inch view, you have to have a vision of what this team is, every facet of the team. Is this going to be a team that's going to be high-powered offense that's going to put pressure on defense? Is this going to be a conservative one? Is this defense going to be, you know, constantly pressure? Is it someone that's going to lay back and just not make mistakes? Are we going to put emphasis on special teams? Are we going to do, all these different little things that, you know, these are decisions that coaches make as they're building their team and building their. So yeah, I think there's a lot of thought put into what they want their offense to kind of the vision of what their offense is. And again, then you get into that maturity of I got to find the right guy to implement it for me. But this is what I want.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I like not to bring this philosophical question full circle, but um, that's where I really like Wink Martindale's defense, kind of first and foremost, in that it's a defense that stresses offenses, and I think it stresses everybody. You bring the blitz package to stress the offensive line, and you disguise coverages to stress the quarterback post snap. So if you can stress the quarterback in two ways, both with physical pressure from a blitz package and his protection, as well as his understanding of what he thinks he sees before the snap and after the snap, then you have put kind of maximum stress on the quarterback. And I think also just, a ton of press man coverage always puts it makes every single snap and every single step of every route that much more important. Where, like, if you're playing a lot more off coverage, you don't have to worry about getting a clean release every time. Where, my quarterback's under pressure in 2 seconds and I can't get a clean release. This guy's got hands all over me. I have to win immediately at the release. It just stresses the whole offense and it throws timing off. Shane Bowen's, the post snap coverage switches and the disguised looks pre snap, I think still puts a lot of stress on quarterbacks, which in this league nowadays are more and more being thrown right into the fire.
And also, more and more quarterbacks are getting injured, and you're having more backup quarterbacks. You're having more movement of quarterbacks around this league. So you don't have the quarter. It's not like the old days where, 10, 15, 20 years ago where the same quarterbacks were starting for a team for 6, 7, 8 years. And there's that comfort level of,
Right.
I know this offense. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've been thinking. You're getting, that's why when we do our pens and pencils, it's like, it's kind of a foolish exercise because we can get to week 12, 13, 14, 15, and it's completely different quarterbacks 6 in
Absolutely.
a row than we thought. So when you have somebody coming in who's a backup, not to mention, occasionally you're going to face a guy like a Tommy DeVito who doesn't know what the fuck's going on.
Exactly.
So, backups are more prevalent. They're not going to know the offenses. They're now so confusing their brains as much as scrambling their brains with a big hit is more critical in this league now than ever.
Yeah, and I think that no matter what the offensive scheme is, it's an offensive league at this point. The rules are skewed against the defense, so anything that puts pressure on the offense, I think, is good. Shane Bowen, is continuing that, but he's kind of subtracting the risk factor. There's a lot more risk involved in Wink Martindale's philosophy and scheme. if the quarterback understands the play, then the wide receiver gets a step and wins at the release, then you got a 75-yard touchdown.
And also, I think we're year one of his regime too, where he's still kind of doing an evaluation of the hand he was dealt with players and things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as we go into year 2 and year 3, as they start acquiring guys that are, fit his scheme like a glove, you'll see more aggressiveness within that scheme too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess that sort of settles it, right? Like an offensive head coach should have some kind of vision for the defense. That's what we both agree, right?
A very good head coach should have a complete vision of everything about his team.
I couldn't agree more. I mean,
all the pieces should fit.
And I think the most stable organizations, it seems like the head coach has everything under control. You look at John Harbaugh, the Baltimore Ravens for years, Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers for years, Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots for lifetimes.
Decades. Yeah.
So I agree. I think that pigeonholing yourself to your talent and then hiring blindly or just being convinced solely every time by somebody else of a vision.
Well, just believing it, like if you make a decision, you're hiring the head coach, having the confidence in that head coach and giving in the faith in him that everything revolves around what his plan is. Again, general manager's job is to get him the players, not I pick players and then this is what you have to work with. That's this is not Moneyball like the way Brad Pitt worked with Art Howe. I mean, if you want to be successful, it's you bring in somebody because he convinced you in the interviews that I have a philosophy and I have a plan to execute that philosophy that will be successful. Then you have to support him wholeheartedly. And the second you don't, and the second you try to do shortcuts or quick fixes to, well, you may be doing this, but we want to do it this way, you might as well just fire him and start over because, again, when the ships aren't sailing in the right direction, you're going to sink.
Yeah. Rare miss on your part to name drop Philip Seymour Hoffman, the late great.
Art Howe is the umpire, the manager, and what did I say? Brad Pitt into Art Howe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry for the lack of continuity there.
That's okay. That's gonna do it for this episode. We'll kind of see if there's one next week. We're a little late this week because of the holiday and Cranky fans' work situation yesterday. So,
yeah,
we'll see if there's something noteworthy. We'll bring it up. A couple things to talk about, but if not, the week after, I think we'll be back at it. Yeah, normal time.
Yeah, it's time to start thinking about pens and pencils.
Yeah,
we're
getting there.
We're getting there.
It's a little bit more of a summer activity because it's like a 3-episode thing, so that might be a little bit more mid-June, I think.
It's an amazing show where we do no planning, but we do the planning live on the show. It's pretty good. I like that.
Exactly. But not only are we not planning, I'm guessing. I'm looking at a mental calendar and I'm trying to guess.
I just do as I'm told, so I'm good.
All right, we will see you guys next time on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and of course at Just Giants Pod. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.